Hello, Adam here. And in this lesson, I know in the previous lesson I talked about I'm going to show some mistakes from the week one uh, player canvas that I had made, and I could still post those, but what I'd rather do in this video is actually show you my actual thought processes as I go through building my player groups, which is really, really important. And we're going to actually see if I can get the bill to work the way I want it to, but it requires us to be thinking about things so that we can put in the right rules. And this is going to be a long video. It's probably about 30 to 45 minutes. But it's really important that you understand this is the actual process that I'm going through every week to ensure that I'm building rosters that I actually want to build. And you need to be thinking about this before you start doing your player groups so you can build as you're thinking about this so you can do the right player groups. And so I'm going to show you, first of all, I'm going to show you this is week 2 of 2024. I'm going to actually show you my potential exposures. I don't plan on changing this too much. I've already made some very clear stands on things. So if you see this in week 2 of 2024, you have, at least you have my stuff and you can choose to disagree. I made some pretty big stands. Specifically, there's some big ones like Brees Hall is projected at 40% ownership. I didn't even want to play him at the beginning. I just completely X'd him out. Still plan on Xing him out. And what I ended up doing is I just said, look, I think there are four shootout potential games. San Francisco, Minnesota is one that people are talking about. I don't think that one will shoot out. That's a guess that I'm making. And I obviously could be wrong. I am playing some Minnesota, some 49ers, but not in stacks because I don't think the game will shoot out. But I do think there are four games that could shoot out. And so I just made it real simple on myself this week. I said, look, I'm going to play these games. All these are pocket passers. I want to pretty much double stack all of them. I think I'm going to double stack all of them. And that's gonna be my stand. I'm banking on these four games shooting out, and you'll see what that looks like in the rules. Like you'll see some weird stuff like why is Jahmyr Gibbs 4%? You'll see why I build special rules around that. And you'll also see that I spent a lot of time invested in high end defenses. I really think defense was a game changer in week one and or a difference maker in week one. And so I just these are the defenses I think are going to do well. I actually been playing the Jets significantly as direct leverage off the Brees Hall chalk. I think if Brees Hall fails, it could be because the Jets defense does well. And so I'm actually going to pull that lever a little bit more. And I wanted to play Garrett Wilson, just couldn't. Anyways, like these are some things I'm thinking through. There, I could talk for about 30 minutes on just the things I'm thinking through. But instead of that, let's actually get into what this actually looks like on the Bink machine. Now, I've done some of the things in the last lesson already, just to kind of get us in, just so I don't have to go through all the stuff. So you'll see I have the team stacks set up. I have the build settings set the way I want. I have my players actually, if I hide I actually have my players set up. So you'll see, just as an example, in my quarterbacks, I have 8 quarterbacks here. Mahomes is 10% as an example, and I have him 8 to 12. And I have this. Oh, actually, I have a mistake here. Wow. Golf needs to be, I think I have him set at 12%. Yeah. So golf's 12%, change that to 10 to 14. That's the range. Good to kind of check your work on some of this stuff. You could absolutely screw things up. And you'll see, yeah, these look pretty good. I might have some mistakes, and if so, we'll learn and figure those out together. So, one big thing that I did change, and this is James mentioned this, but I'm going to be doing that this week as well, is I'm going to play 2 Rams without their quarterback. I typically don't do that because it really complicates the Bink machine rules. But I'm going to make sure I have this set here. So on the Rams, on stacked players, I can have 1 or 2. But if there's not if basically if I'm not playing Matt Stafford, I still want up to 2 Rams, and I'll try to figure through some of those rules. Uh, I am intentionally not stacking Stafford with Karen Williams. I think that is a sharp way to play. It's just not the way I play. And so I specifically like playing Karen Williams or running backs as leverage off the stacks. It doesn't make as much sense this week just because Stafford is so low owned. But I'm going to leave this here for now. I might change, or this right here, this running back. I could check this so Karen could be in the stack, but I'm actually going to intentionally not have that. So let's get into the actual how this actually looks. And what you need to, so all I'm going to do in this lesson is really show you how I build my groups. Now, I already started talking to you about my defensive groups. I've already built these out just because there's not much to talk about here. Like, for instance, Cowboys D, if I play the Cowboys D, I won't play any Cowboys players. Some of these players I'm not playing at all, but I just go through the motion of adding all the Cowboys pass catchers so that I cannot make dumb mistakes in the event. Like I end up wanting to play one of these, wide receiver threes. I can't remember who it is. It's Tolbert or Turpin. Uh, but so here are the defense groups. Pretty straightforward there. I did build this rule about the Rams cheap wide receivers and tight ends. I think JM had a different way of doing this. I kept it real simple. I can play at minimum zero, but at max one. So I can never play more than one of these three players. I think that makes that rule really simple. And then I'm going to actually go through my stacks. And the way I build my rules is I always start at my quarterback. So I look at Mahomes and I ask the question, how do I want to build my Mahomes stacks? Do I want double stacks? Do I want single stacks? Do I want a little bit of both? How do I actually want to run my Mahomes stacks? And in this case, I feel like if Mahomes actually runs for head habit score, he's bringing two pass catchers along. That is the stand I'm taking. It may not be right. It may not be true. But my stand is he's taking two pass catchers with him. So what that means is I have to build a group for Mahomes. I have to build a few groups here. So Mahomes, and I'm going to call this the Mahomes double stack. Right. So Mahomes, and then I will put in all the players: Rice, Kelsey, Xavier Worthy. You might think I'm crazy for this, but I'm actually going to play 2% Justin Watson. I haven't decided on Noah Gray right now. I don't have him in my player pool, but I might end up adding him later. And basically what I'll do here is I'll say if Patrick Mahomes play two of these players 100% of the time, this forces a double stack. Holmes, he or the anchor must play double stacks. So this looks like the next thing I want to ask myself is, from a Mahomes, is there any players, I call it the stud, is there a player from the Mahomes stack that I want on every roster? And in this case, the answer for me is actually a yes. If I don't set this up, this rule just basically could give me Justin Watson and Noah Gray as the two people with Mahomes. I don't want that. That would not be the two people I want to stack. Maybe one of these guys, but not both. So I want to make sure, and the way I do this is I make sure I get the one or two guys that I really want to make sure at least one of them is on the roster. So in this situation, it could be like make sure one of Rice and Kelsey are on the roster. In this actual example, though, or the way I'm going to play it this week, is I am actually going to force Rice in every roster. I think Kelsey could have a good game, but I don't think Rice, if Holmes hits and Kelsey hits, I still think Rice comes along for the ride. And I think the same thing of Worthy. And so I'm actually making a stand here that says every Mahomes roster must have Rice, and every Mahomes roster must have basically is saying Rice plus one of these four. Now, you really need to think about how this operates, right? If I have Mahomes at 10% and I'm playing Rashee Rice in every Mahomes lineup, I better have at least 10% Rice. And I do. I also better make sure I have enough of Kelsey, Worthy, and Justin Watson in this case, cough, but that's the way I'm going to play it this week, to cover the other part of the double stack, right? So 10% of between Kelsey, Worthy, and Justin Watson. You'll see I actually have 4% Kelsey and 6% Worthy. So that covers the 10%. And I actually have 2% Justin Watson. So it's about 12-ish percent. Now, what this means is if you think about how this operates, what this means is Mahomes is going to be double stacked with Rice and one of Kelsey, Worthy, or Watson. And those three players are probably not going to be in any other rosters. You need to make sure that's what you want. In this case, I feel like it is. In fact, The way I'm actually going to play this is I am going to play it that way. And I'm going to ensure that this actually happens by building I call it the reverse the reverse stack rules. I'm actually going to ensure that on my Kelsey rosters, the way I'm playing this strategy this week is I want my tight end to be part of my stack, or I want to pick a cheap tight end. I know a lot of people are doing this. That's fine. You'll see I've got a bunch of cheap tight ends. These are the ones that are going to be my fillers as one-offs. They're going to be in my stacks too. Stack, 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 stack. All these are in my stacks, by the way. So they'll have exposure in the stacks, but there'll also be a lot of one-offs as well. In fact, these three tight ends are also in my stacks. Breck Bowers is the only one-off. And so, but I've heavy exposure is on the cheap tight ends. And the reason for that, is just the way I'm playing this week. I think that's the right way to go, etc. So I'm actually going to force basically my stud tight ends to be with their quarterbacks or the bringbacks, which we'll talk about. But in this case, I actually want Kelsey to be with Mahomes 100% of the time. It's only 4%. That's exactly how I'm going to do it. I also need to think about what this looks like for Watson. I don't want to play Justin Watson. The Justin Watson play is strictly a game environment play if Mahomes hits. I don't want to play Justin Watson outside of the Mahomes stack. And I'm only playing him because of the fact that it would be a really unique differentiator if Watson hit for, I don't know, 2 catches for 70 yards and 2 touchdowns. Well, that would absolutely destroy Mahomes with doubles from another standpoint, like Rice and Worthy or Rice and Kelsey. So I'm taking a small bet. It's 2% of my rosters, but it's going to be Justin Watson forced with Patrick Mahomes. I would never want to play Justin Watson on a non-Mahomes roster. So I've made those rules. I can make the same rule for Xavier Worthy, but I don't want to. It's not going to make much of a difference, but it'll make a little bit of a difference because basically what I want is I want Xavier Worthy to potentially be on my bringbacks. Notice when I tie things this way, Kelsey is not going to ever be on a Burrow lineup. It's not going to be a bringback on a Burrow lineup. I could add Burrow here and say I only want him a part of a game environment. I could do that. I'm intentionally not doing that this week. In fact, in my Burrow stacks, I'll be playing Mike Gesicki. If I'm filling a tight end spot, it's probably going to be Mike Gesicki on the Burrow rosters. Okay. A lot to think about here, but very important that you understand exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it. Just because I'm in the same game environment, I'm going to do the Burrow lineup as well. So typically I go quarterback all the way down. In this case with Joe Burrow, because I'm going to probably because I'm doing every quarterback from the 4 games, that's how I'm playing this slate. Let me just do the Burrow rules as well. So I'll make a bunch of new groups. Let's call this the Burrow double. Joe Burrow, same thing. I'm going to be playing Joe Burrow doubles across the board. Every Joe Burrow lineup is going to have 2 pass catchers. Chase, Irwin. Yes, I'm playing Trenton Irwin. Playing some Yoshivas. I don't want to play him, but he was on the field 100% of the snaps week 1. And Gesicki. And here's Burrow. 3-3. This forces a Joe Burrow double. And I've got all the pass catchers I want there. Now the same thing here. This is the Burrow stud stack. And I am going to make sure that every Joe Burrow lineup has Jamar Chase in it. This is a very clear, given. If Joe Burrow has a how to have it score, I don't see that happening with Yoshivas and Irwin. Like Chase is definitely going to be part of it. The Mahomes with only Rice is a little bit of a gamble. It's just the way I'm playing. But the Burrow one's pretty straightforward, and some of these are. I did forget on the Mahomes stack to bring back. So let me pivot real quick because I got to do the Burrow bring back, which is going to be a little bit tricky. And we need to talk through that. But let me actually talk about the Mahomes bring back. So on the Patrick Mahomes lineup, do I want a Bingle bring back? And if so, who do I want? In this case, on the Mahomes lineups, if he goes for a big head-to-head score, I'm not playing. I'm not playing Chase Brown. I'm not playing Zach Moss. I'm just not. Sorry. I feel like the only bring back I actually want on the Mahomes lineups is Jamar Chase. I could put Yoshibas in there. I could put Irwin. I could put Gesicki in there. I might put Gesicki later. But in this case, for now, I'm only going to put Chase. Now, I don't want Chase on all of this. This would tie Mahomes to Chase at the hip. And I don't feel like that's right for me. So I'm not going to force a bring back on all the Mahomes lineups, but I am going to force it on 50% of them. That's 5% because I'm playing Mahomes 10%. And that's going to be Chase. So I want Chase on half of the Mahomes lineups. And let me make sure I have the exposure to handle this, right? Here's, by the way, so Mahomes has Chase 5% of the time. Joe Burrow has Chase 10% of the time. I need to make sure I have 15% exposure to Chase. Let me reiterate. I'm forcing Chase on 5% of lineups, 50% of Mahomes rosters. That's 5%. And I have Chase on 100% of my Burrow lineups. That's 10%. So I need to make sure I have 15% exposure to Jamar Chase at least. And I have accounted for it here. If I do not account for it here, again, something will give in the rules. If I had this at like 10%, then either Burrow, I'm gonna either have, I'm either gonna break this rule and get more Chase than I said, or I'm going to have lower exposure to Mahomes and or Burrow. So as you're building the rules, you need to think through and making sure you have the exposures to match those rules. This also means, by the way, that Chase is going to be on 7% of rosters that don't have Burrow or Mahomes, most likely. 10% here, 5% here, 7% because he's at 22 of neither. So he'll be a one-off in 7% of rosters. I actually want that. It's part of my strategy. Cool. All right. So we talked about Mahomes bring-back. We talked about the Burrow stacks. Let's talk about the Burrow bring-back. This is actually really important. The Burrow bring-back. Do I want to bring back from Kansas City on every Burrow roster? And the answer here for me is yes. If Burrow is having a head-to-head score, then someone from Kansas City I want on every roster. This is the way I thought through this is if Burrow has a head-to-head score and Mahomes doesn't have a head-to-head score, then a lesser the score, then that means something happened that allowed Burrow to have a much higher score than Mahomes. And by the way, the most obvious path to this is that Pacheco had a big game. I don't think Cincinnati is going to blow out Kansas City. That's not the most likely scenario. I think it's because Kansas City kept pace and or destroyed them. Maybe Burrow's playing catch-up mode. And so guess who I'm going to put in the bring back here? It's going to be Pacheco. Now I am going to add Rashee Rice, and I'm going to add Xavier Worthy here. There isn't much wiggle room here, on the Mahomes doubles. The Mahomes thing, if you think about this, and I'm talking this through live, like this is hard for me to figure out, right? But on the Mahomes doubles, 10%, every one of them has Rice, no problem. 4% of Kelsey, 2% of Watson. So I need 4% more to cover that second stack spot in the double stack. That's Xavier Worthy is going to be 4% of it. So 10% Mahomes with Rice. And the other 10% is going to be one of Kelsey, 4%, Watson, 2%. And that leaves 4% for Worthy. Now, I only have Worthy. Where did he go? I only have Worthy 6% total. What this means is there's only 2% left for him to show up somewhere else. So he could be a one-off or he could be part of the Burrow bringback. My guess is he'll probably be part of the Burrow bringback. I could again force that. I'm just not going to. I'm gonna be a little bit loose on the rules. This is already a lot of rules just for my quarterbacks. So I'm just gonna kind of leave it where it is here. So my bro bring back, it's most likely going to be Pacheco. Some of it's going to be Rice, and maybe a little bit for Worthy. So it could be 2%. It could be, and then Rice. If how much Rice do I have in my exposure? Rice, 16%. So I have 6% left over to be a bring back here. But that means that Pacheco's probably going to be in over half the lineups for the Bro stocks. I kind of like this. I don't think Burrow's going to outscore Mahomes unless Pacheco has a big game. There could be a scenario where outscores Mahomes and Rashid Rice scores, 9 for 150 and untouched, but no one else hits, including Mahomes. Like I could see that happening. But the most likely scenario is Burrow Burrow beats Mahomes in fantasy points because Pacheco hits. So I like that. Okay. This is me talking through this is just one game. But you have to think through this stuff. Otherwise, you're going to build your lineups and be really mad with your results. And the thing is, if you don't look through each individual, you're not going to see this at an aggregate 150. Like you can't wrap 150 lineups in your head. And so you really need to think through all this stuff now. Otherwise, you're going to get your lineups. It's not going to feel right to you, but it's not going to feel right to you. And you're not going to understand why. Trust me, years of making big machine optimizer mistakes. I understand. I got to think through this stuff. All right. We're done with one game. Let's go to the next one. Let's go to Dallas, New Orleans. Dak Prescott. Yes, I'm playing Dak. Yes, I'm double stacking Dak. Fun. Dak. It is going to be a Dak Prescott double stack. If Dak hits at 6,700, and by the way, all these quarterbacks are basically pocket passers. I'm not playing Richardson. I'm not playing Daniels. I'm not playing Lamar. There's no Hurts. Kyler, I'll show you what I'm doing with Kyler in a second. Well, I'm still going to play doubles with Kyler. You'll see why. Dak is going to have a double stack. And that is going to include CeeDee Lamb, Mr. Schoonmaker, I think that's how you say it. They made a funny name for him in the Inner Circle, or in the Slate podcast today. I can't remember what it was. But that guy actually looks pretty good. 2,900. Isn't that a good stack right there? Look at this. Cheapy with he catches 1 or 2 touchdowns. He hits 200 yards. Like that's possible. Especially if Lattimore and Matthew are out, which we're not sure about yet. Okay. I'm also going to have some Cooks. Brendan Cooks. And I don't think I don't have any of the other guys. I don't have Kevontae Turpin. And I don't have Jalen Tolbert in my player pool. So I'll put them in the double sec, but they're 0% owned right now or exposed right now. So it's basically useless unless I come back later and say, Sunday morning, I say, I want to play 2% of Tolbert. Well, then I'll have to adjust the rule. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to have the rule in there just in case. But I anchored CeeDee Lamb. That was a mistake. Made many of those in the past, by the way. Dak, double stack with 2 of these guys. Dak, do I want Dak to make sure that my deck has at least a certain guy on it? Or guys, in this case, yes, every deck lineup has CeeDee Lamb. Just like the Burrow Chase thing, pretty straightforward. Dak, definitely with CeeDee. Dak, definitely with 2 pass catchers. So obviously, one will be CeeDee and one will be either Brandon Cooks or Luke Schoonmaker. That guy. Now, you might ask the question, did you really play Brandon Cooks? If I don't play Brandon Cooks and I have Schoonmaker, then this is basically useless. It's just Prescott with Lamb and Schoonmaker 10% of all my rosters. But I actually did play Brandon Cooks. I'm actually playing him 6% of the time. And I want him. I don't want to play Cooks by himself. I'm only playing him as part of a game bet. So guess what? Cooks. Dak. If I play Cooks, I am definitely playing Dak in my. Basically, this says this is telling the story of 6% of my Dak stacks, Dak lineups are going to have both CeeDee Lamb and Cooks, and 4% of them are going to have Dak and Luke Schoonmaker. I may change this to 4% later and just have 44% Dak, CD, Cooks, and then that would adjust the others to Schoonmaker. Again, Schoonmaker, I have 16%. He's one of my one-offs that I'm playing as a low tight end play. I like him as a pivot off like CeeDee Lamb chop, by the way. Like I actually like that play. Anyways, do I want to bring back on the Dak side? I actually haven't thought through this. But if I do have a bring back, it's going to be Mr. Olave, not Alvin Kamara, because I am making other bets. My running back pool is pretty tight. I'm not playing Kamara. I might, in a game scenario, I could have like 4% Kamara and just force him as one of the bringbacks. I may end up doing that. You know what? I'm just going to add it just in case. But here's the question: Do I want a New Orleans bringback on every one of these rosters? So can Dallas? I could see me on the New Orleans side having a Dallas bringback. That is kind of tricky, by the way, because the bringback there is probably CeeDee Lamb only on the New Orleans stack. Ugh. But on the Dak side, do I want a New Orleans bringback on every roster? The answer is no, probably not. But very well, I'm betting on game environments this week. I want it on more rosters than not. So in this case, I'm going to put 60%, and it's going to be distributed between Olave and Shaheed. Just so you can see my exposures to these guys. Yeah, I've got quite a bit of these guys because I'm betting on the game environment. It'll be real important with the Derek Carr stacks, by the way. But Olave 14%, Shaheed 18%. So more than enough to cover the bring back. I am playing 10% Derek Carr. We'll have to make sure that we cover it, which we will do right here. Derek Carr. I know I'm crazy. Again, I'm betting on game environments this week. Derek Carr doubles. Derek Carr, Olave, Shaheed, and our good friend, and I'm making a bet here based on what I saw in snap counts for Foster Moreau. I'm not playing Taysom. I'm not playing Juwan. Again, a bet I'm making very low price tight end. Played 70% of the snaps. 4 for 40 and a touchdown, something like that. Even if he gets me 4 for 40 and no touchdown, I'm happy. Came out of concussion protocol, he's in. I like it. This is a really good play. It's like the Schoonmaker play. So Derek Carr doubles. This forces doubles on every Derek Carr stack. Now the question, this is a hard one. Do I want to force, in this case, it would only be Olave. Do I want Olave on every roster? Or am I okay with a Derek Carr, Shaheed? It would only be, if Olave's not on the roster and I'm doubled, that means it has to be a Carr, Shaheed, Moreau lineup. I don't think I want that. I think I want every Derek Carr lineup to have Olave. So I'm going to actually do this. Derek Carr, Olave. I'm making that bet. Now, this is really important because on my Derek Carr, what this means is 10%. I'm playing 10% Derek Carr. As crazy as that sounds. I may end up lowering Derek Carr on this. Again, I'm playing game environments. I like Derek Carr because of his price tag, right? Good game environment, potentially good game. I'm betting that's a good game environment. Real cheap, right? Already the other cheapies, relative cheapies, already have over 10%. Like, I'm probably gonna keep this, which means if 10% of my Derek Carr is eaten up with the Olave pairing, 4% is left as Dak bringbacks. And that probably means I will have no Olave outside of the game stack, which I'm kind of okay with. I don't necessarily need to play Olave as a one-off. I kind of want to play him more as a game environment. I'd like to have the Dak bringback, the chance for Olave to be in more of those, but this feels fine. I was thinking about upping this to 16 or 18%, but I'm fine with this. Um, okay. Again, thinking through this out loud, it's hard sometimes. And then here's the hard one. Oh, is there any player that I want to have only with Derek Carr? Olave, no. Shaheed, no. I'll be playing some Shaheed one-off probably based on my 18% exposure. I think he's just a good play in general, especially because he's low owned. I don't understand why he's low owned. He's such a good play, in my opinion. Anyways, um, I'll be having him some outside of the Dak and um, Derek Carr lineups. The question is, who do I want to bring back with the Carr lineup? Can't be Cooks because Cooks is only in the Dak rosters. That'd be a weird lineup too. Carr with two pass catchers hitting, and then the bringbacks Cooks. Like, is Cooks really the guy that forced? It has to be Lamb, right? I could put Schoonmaker in there, but I'm just not. I don't know. It's so weird. Bring back. I think what I'm going to do here is there. We go. I think I'm going to put the CD in there, right? I'm going to put Carr as CD, and I'm not going to put Schoonmaker. And then, but Cooks, I can't put because I've already forced him here. And I want that. I don't want Cooks in the non-Dak lineups, even if it's Carr. I don't want Cooks to be the bringback. That doesn't make sense to me. So that means that really only leaves CeeDee Lamb as the bringback. And I don't want to tie these guys to the hip, which means I'm probably gonna have some car stacks that don't have a bringback from Dallas, which feels really weird. Feels really weird. But I could see an environment where Carr hits and Lamb gets 25 points. I can see that happening. And in the situation that happens, I don't necessarily need Lamb as a bringback. But I do want him in a lot of lineups. So that means 6% or 60% of my Carr lineups are going to have CeeDee Lamb. Does that feel good? I don't know. Not ugh. 10% of Dak is eaten up with CD. 6% of Carr is eaten up with CD. It actually, the math works out perfect. But what that means is no CeeDee Lamb outside of the game environment. I like that actually. He's 8,800. If he outscores, I'm looking at these five guys right here. If Lamb outscores them, he's got to outscore them significantly because he's the highest priced wide receiver. I like that. This basically forces Lamb to only be in the game environment. I could make a rule on top of this that says CeeDee Lamb can only be, it would be like I would do it like this, right? Lamb, Carr, or I'm not going to actually do this rule, but I'll just show you what it looks like, right? Because you can do this, right? It's Lamb, Derek Carr, Dak Prescott. You could do it like this, right? Lamb has to be in the game environment. I think my rules are just going to account for that by themselves. And I don't want to add more rigidity to it if I don't have to. If Lamb happens to slip into one or two lineups that don't have the game environment, I'm not going to be mad about that, to be honest. So I'm just going to leave it alone. It probably will end up that Lamb, and we'll check this, right? We'll check all the Lamb lineups and see who's the quarterback. And if I get a lot of Lamb without Prescott or Carr, something's wrong with my math, right? Okay. We're halfway done with our rules. One of the rules I would think about typically is with the tight end. In this case, like Foster Moreau, I am playing Foster Moreau. Would I want to play Foster Moreau only with Carr? In some cases, the answer is yes. In this case, the answer is no, because I'm making a bigger bet on, again, small, cheap tight ends this week. So if I had Foster Moreau at like 4% here, that probably means I want him specifically with the car stacks. And so I would make a rule that says only play Foster Moreau with Derek. All right. 2 of 4, 2 of 4 games down. Let's pick the next one. So Kyler, it's gonna be the Arizona and Los Angeles game. And this was gonna be real tricky because of the way I'm playing the Rams, the fact that I'm allowing 2 Rams, it's just really tricky. So let's start with the Kyler. Kyler's definitely going to be a double. I'll show you why I'm forcing Kyler doubles. Marvin Harrison, Trey McBride, Michael Wilson, and our good friend Greg Dortch. So Kyler forced with 2 of his pass catchers. Is there a player on Arizona that I absolutely want on every Kyler lineup? And the answer here is I'm okay if it's Kyler McBride and Dortch. I'm okay if it's Kyler Marvin Harrison and Dortch. I'm not okay. The only combination I'm not okay with probably is Kyler with Dortch and Wilson. That would not be good. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a Kyler stud stack. And in this case, the real question is, I'm definitely going to have at least Marvin Harrison in this. I think he's number 1 wide receiver. I think week 1 was a fluke. For many reasons. But here's the question is, do I want to force Marvin Harrison in every Kyler lineup? Or am I okay with a Trey McBride as part of this as well? Meaning, could I have Kyler, Trey McBride, and not Marvin Harrison? Kyler, McBride, and Michael Wilson. Am I okay with that? I don't know. Am I? Kyler 14%. If I force Harrison on every Kyler lineup, the question, I'm thinking through this real time. Is there a way where Trey McBride hits and Harrison, Kyler hits, Trey McBride hits, and Harrison doesn't? And the answer is I feel like yes. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to say Kyler has to play at least one of these 2 guys. But so it could be McBride and not Harrison in a Kyler lineup. I'm going to be okay with that. Note that I have to do this. If you ever do this stud stack, this is really important because I've screwed this rule up. You need to make it min 2, max 3, which if you do 2 and 2, what this actually says is Harrison and McBride can never be on the same roster, including in double stacks. And I actually would love some of my double stacks with Kyler to be with both Harrison and McBride. It's a little bit expensive, but I'm playing the game environments this week. So I need to make sure it's max of 3. Now, you might ask the question, are you really playing Dortch and Wilson? Let's go check it out. I'm playing Greg Dortch and I'm playing Wilson. I'm playing each of them 4% of the time. And the reason why I'm playing them 4% of the time is because I'm betting on the game environment. What this means, if you do the math on this, I'm not playing Connor in the stacks. I don't do that. You could teach his own. I'm just not going to. It makes the rules complex. What this means is 8% of my rosters are going to be Kyler doubles with one of these 2 guys. So that means 6% of my Kyler rosters have to be a double stack with Harrison and McBride because that's all that's left. It is a chunk of salary. That's pretty expensive. Do I really want that? It's tricky. I could up these guys. Let's do that, actually. I think that's the right play. I'm going to up Wilson. Wilson I know he made a horrible drop. He has touchdown upside. More than Dortch. Sorry, OWS fam. I'm going to do this. I'm going to up him to 6. Means I got to drop someone. Man, I really don't want to do that. I don't want to drop any of my. Maybe I could drop one of my One of these guys. Let's see. I like all my guys though. Most of these are part of game environments as well. Neighbors is not, but I've already dropped him more than I want to. You know what I'm going to do instead? Instead of this, I'm going to drop Kyler to 12% here. And I'm going to increase one of either um, Baker, Goff, or Stafford. Maybe I'll increase Baker another 2%. Let's do that. No, let's actually do Stafford. Let's do that. So now 4% of my, this is cool. 4% of my lineups are Kyler stacks with Harrison and McBride for sure. 4% of my lineups are Kyler with Wilson and one of Harrison or McBride. 4% of my lineups are Kyler with one of Dortch and Harrison or McBride. I like that. It's a good split. It's a good. I'm covering all my bases. That's what an optimizer does. Whew. This stuff's tricky. Really got to think through this. All right, Kyler Greenback. Ooh. Do I want a Greenback? I ran Greenback on every Kyler stack. The answer is probably. And it is going to be the big dogs. Do I want Robinson on this? Do I really think I want, if I have a betting on this game environment, do I want the bring back to be like Robinson, Marcus Robinson? Ugh. No. No, not really. Do I want it to have a bring back on every lineup? Because if I do this, I'm basically saying Kyler. If either of these guys fail, all my Kyler lineups die. Kind of okay with that. These guys are pretty. These are my bets this week. I think just like JM, these are my big bets. I think I've got Cup at 70% and Kyron at 44% or something. This would eat into, I have the exposure to cover these guys. 70. Yeah, 44. I'm gonna leave this. Oh, make sure I get 2 and 2. Carelessly have one and only one of these guys. I like it. Just gonna quickly go through my lineups, make sure I didn't screw anything up here. All right. I feel good. Let's go to the Stafford one. Whew. Matthew Stafford, double Stafford. This one's not going to be too hard. I'm not going to play Carr on the Stafford stacks. Again, that's just a bet I'm making. I know you can get real unique with adding him and Kyron and Cup or him and Kyron and Robinson. I know. I am just not going to do that. It's not the way I play typically, and I don't want to change that for this. I don't want to change that for this. I actually think if Kyron is a big game, I'd rather have him more on the Kyler stacks. It's just easier that way. So doubles. Oh. Colby Parkinson. Tyler Johnson. There's many ways to work this out, and I'm fine with that. I like this. Pretty straightforward here. Stafford, the stud stack here, because I'm playing 70% Cup. I don't think Stafford has a big game if Cooper Cup does not. That's pretty straightforward. There could be a way where Stafford has a big game and Kyron has a big game and Cup does not. I am not betting on that. Again, I'm not betting on that this week. So boom, boom. And then here's the hard part. Matthew Stafford bring back. Oh, this is a tricky one. I definitely want a bring back. Actually, this may not be too hard. Because I have 3 good options here. Not Connor. James Conner. Stafford with one of these guys. The question is, do I want it on every lineup? Again, I'm betting on game environment. If I'm playing Stafford, you got to think about it this way. This is how I'm thinking about it. I'm playing a lot of Cup and Kyron. They're going to be mixed and matched in one-offs on all the other lineups. All my other game stacks, like they're going to be one of those is probably the Derek Carr stacks, for instance, right? In the Derek Carr lineups, there's going to be probably one of Cooper Cup or Kyron Williams. There's probably going to be that. So in the places where I have Stafford as the quarterback, that means to me, I'm betting on the game environment being successful. And I think I need to bring back from Arizona. In this case, it's going to look like, yeah, I'm good with this 100%. Every Stafford lineup is going to have an Arizona bring back. I actually want that in this case. Yep. Are there any players on LA that I want to tie at the hip to Stafford? Like, do I want to make sure all my Robinson lineups are tied to Stafford or Tyler Johnson? In this case, the answer is no, because I'm actually overexposing myself past the Stafford stacks potentially. I'm okay if these guys fit as one-offs in other rosters. I'm okay with that this week. Same with Colby Ferguson. He's going to be highly owned, whatever, that's fine. I may end up changing this percentage later. Maybe put some dual switch in. That's why I have him here, even though he's at 0%. I may end up doing like this later, right? It may end up going like that. But for now, I'll leave things the way they are. These are small adjustments I make Sunday morning, late Saturday night, Sunday morning. Okay. All right. 3 games down, 1 to go. We've got this is a real interesting. I thought through some of this before I did the video, but when you're in live actually doing it, it's hard. Let's talk about Mr. Jared Goff. Same thing, Goff. I want doubles. I want Amon St. Brown. I want Sam Laporta. I want James Williams. And I want, don't laugh, Clay Freeman. The Clay Freeman play, by the way, is if Williams is hurt. I think Williams is gonna play, but he may be limited. Or he may re-aggravate his ankle injury. It's an ankle injury. And if he re-aggravates his ankle injury, guess who's the number 2 wide receiver who no one's going to play? And that's it's Clay Freeman. And I'm getting him really cheap. The reason why no one wants to play the Detroit stack this week is because very expensive, scary. That's why no one's playing Detroit this week. And so my reasoning on this is I will embrace the expensive and make a pivot play and potentially throw in some Cleve Raymond. I don't like him as a player, but I'm betting on a game environment this week. So here's Goff, 3 and 3. Now, Jared Goff, stud stack. This is a good one. Who is going to be on my Jared Goff? Do I want to make sure that Amon St. Brown's on every roster, or Sam Laporta's on every roster, or one of the two? In this situation right here, I could have a lineup with Williams and Khalif. I actually intentionally don't want that. In fact, part of my Khalif Raymond play is banking on the fact, what if Jameson Williams gets hurt or re-aggravates his injury, or he's a decoy this game? So let me actually build a rule for that. I think that's actually really important. Khalif, no Jameson. I'd never want Khalif and Jameson on the same roster to begin with. And it would only happen on a stack. So I'm actually going to put it like this. Not on Jameson. I'm actually going to do it like this. Oops. So up to, a roster could have 0 of either. I'm not anchoring either of these guys. I could anchor. But what I'm saying here is I could make it like this, anchor Jameson. I could do this. Anchor Jameson. If Jameson's in the lineup, make sure Khalif's not. This does it. I could also unanchor him and say, I have a pool of, in all of my lineups, have it at least 0, which means you don't have to have them, but at max 1. So either way it works. However, whatever makes the most logical sense to you, or whatever makes your brain not hurt. I'll do it this way. You could also do the anchor the other way, no problem, right? Okay. This ensures that I never have a Khalif and Jameson lineup together or on the same roster. And effectively what that means is it's one of these two. That means one of these two has to be on the roster. Amon and Laporta. Now, I could just cement that by saying, my Jared Goff stud stack, right? I could cement that by intentionally saying Sam Laporta, Amon St. Brown. I could do it like this between 2 and 3. Very similar to how we did the Kyler stud stack. Very similar to this. The question you have to ask yourself that I actually don't know the answer to is, do I want to tie Jared Goff the hip with. In this case, it would be, Amon-Ra. Am I okay with the Jared Goff, Sam Laporta, Jamison Williams lineup? I'm going to say yes. And the reason why I'm going to say yes is because both these guys work the middle of the field. Sam not as much. Laporta not as much. I almost don't want them on a lineup together. I mean, this is very expensive. This is really expensive. I put them on a lineup together. That's a lot of salary. I need like salary savings. Yeah, I'm good with this. Goff with Amon-Ra or Laporta. I'm okay with one or two lineups, 1 or 2% of the lines having all three of them. That's just a lot of salary. I'm okay with that. That could happen. I mean, they could all hit big. They could go for 100 points. Like that's possible. It's in the range of outcomes for this game. But I don't want to tie. Yeah, I'm okay with Goff, Laporta, and one of Williams or Khalif. I'm okay with that. I'm gonna live with it. I'm gonna try to limit the other rules on this. Man, that was hard to think through though. Let's talk about the bring back. Goff bring back. I can have many people in this bring back. It could be Mike Evans. I'm okay with Chris Godwin. And I am okay with Rachaad White. I may not. I'll think about this. I might remove Rachaad White. Um, the question is how much. These guys are all expensive. I'm already paying a lot for the Detroit. This is why this stack is so low owned. I mean, the whole game is going overlooked because the price tags are so expensive. Do I want to force a Tampa Bay on this? And the answer really is yes, for the most part. Again, I'm betting on game environments this week. So where I can, where it makes sense, I want to have these guys. I'm going to do it. Goff, I'm going to force one of these three. It'll probably end up being a lot of Rachaad White. I'm kind of okay with that. Okay with that. I'm all right with that. I'll leave this. We'll build some lineups and see how the Goff looks. I'm just make sure I have enough to cover that, right? Goff is 12%. I've got 10% Rachaad White. I've got 16% Evans, and I've got 18% Godwin. I'm obviously about to build 40% Baker lineups, so I need to make sure I account for that. I think it's going to be fine because I have Jalen McMillan, and Jalen McMillan is really going to be the way I open up the Baker stacks, just like I did with Khalif for Detroit. There is a rule that I did forget on the Khalif Raymond. Oh man, I'm so glad I remembered this. Khalif forced Goff. On the Khalif Raymond, I don't want to play Khalif Raymond as a one-off. I'm playing him as part of the game environment bet. The other guys I'm okay as one-offs. I maybe not Amon-Ra. Maybe I'll do a Amon-Ra as part of the game environment. I don't want to play Amon-Ra as a one-off. Then again, I'm only playing him 14%. Like, I'm not playing him that much. But I definitely don't want Khalif Raymond as a one-off. I am specifically betting on Khalif Raymond as part of the game environment. So I want that. All right, last one. Ooh. Baker Mayfield. I want to double stack Baker, just like what won a lot of tournaments last week or helped win a lot of tournaments last week. And it is going to be Evans, Godwin, and Jalen McMillan. I anticipate a lot of the Baker stacks are going to have McMillan on them, which is fine. Yeah, no problem. One of the interesting questions on this is, let me just make sure. Jalen McMillan is 10%. I have him 10% exposed. That's pretty good. I may bump that a little bit. I may bump that a little. We'll see what happens. This right here basically says I could have a Godwin McMillan stack. I could have an Evans McMillan stack, or I could have an Evans Godwin stack. Am I okay with that? And the answer is yeah. Just for parity's sake, I could build the stud stack. I don't necessarily need to in this case because, well, here's the question. Do I want every Baker to only have Mike Evans? Like, do I want to force Evans on every Baker lineup? If Baker hits, could it be Godwin and McMillan hit and not Evans? I'm not concluding Rashad White. You could include Rashad White. Remember, I don't do running backs. Just trying to keep it simple. Could it be Godwin and Evans? Could it be Godwin and McMillan that hits? I'm gonna let that be part of it. So I don't necessarily need this group. This double basically accounts for there's three combinations of this, right? One Evans and Godwin, Evans McMillan, Godwin McMillan. I'm obviously okay if it's Evans and Godwin. I'm okay if it's definitely okay with Evans and McMillan. I think of Evans as the stud, the main stud. The question is, do I want to force Evans in every Baker stack, or I'm okay having Evans outside of the Baker stack? How much am I playing Evans? 16%. Am I okay? I'm okay if he's part of the game environment with Detroit, although he's expensive himself. Nope. I am going to make the play. I'm going to make the play. Baker, Evans tied at the hip. I may change this later tonight. My intuition's telling me I want Baker. If Baker has a big game, Evans, I need Evans to come along for the ride. If Godwin comes along for the ride, that's fine. I'm going to do that. Evans had a real big game for them last year, like 9 for 141 and a touchdown against Detroit, not the playoff one. I think he did okay in the playoff game too. Man, that's hard. Okay, Baker, bring back in the Baker stack. Do I want to bring back? I definitely want to bring back in some of the lineups. Again, these guys are expensive. Laporta, Jameson, and this is the last one that's really interesting. The Gibbs. One of them for sure. One of the questions I have here is, do I want Jameson Williams as the bring back? Because he's so low priced compared to these other guys, he might be in most of the ringbacks, which I don't necessarily want. I could force it to be one of these three guys. Then it's a salary. I am betting on the game, right? That's hard. Hmm. I'm okay with him being there, but not like a lot. And the problem is I can anticipate the optimizer from a salary standpoint, adding Jameson Williams as the bring back. There are ways to build rules to make this like Baker and Jameson only 20% of the time. Man, that's you're relying on the optimizer to add extra. Those rules are really hard. I am going to. What's the scenario where Baker hits big and nobody on Detroit's hitting big except Jameson Williams? It did happen last game. I'll think about this. Maybe I'll build some lines to see what happens. One thing that I do want to bring out, though, and this is a rule I want, is I included 4% Jahmyr Gibbs specifically for this scenario. I don't want Jahmyr Gibbs on my golf lineups. You could do that if you want, but I actually want Gibbs. I intentionally built this. So Jahmyr Gibbs would be on the Baker bringbacks. My 4% is a little bit of Gibbs. I'm only playing Gibbs as the bringback for the Baker stacks. I built this into my exposures. But I'm actually going to do this. That's intentional. I don't want to play Gibbs as a one-off. I'm intentionally betting on him as part of the game environment, and I don't want to put him with the golf lineups. I want him to be. I could see Baker having a big game and Gibbs having a big game, and no one else in Detroit having a big game, and that would make Baker the right quarterback, and Gibbs being the right bringback. So that does mean that 4% of my Baker's lineups are going to have Gibbs. That means 10% of my Baker lineups are going to have one of the other pass catchers. Right. A lot of rules. You had to really talk through and think through this. I'm talking out loud. It's very hard to do this out loud. But I did it. And I'm going to quickly look at some of my. Sometimes I have guys at low percentages because I intentionally want them as part of a game environment or a certain rule I'm going to make. Let me just go check these. Anyone lower than 10%, I'm going to look at. Ayuk, I have him at 8%, but I want him as one-offs. I'm not partying. I'm not playing San Francisco game environment stacks. Worthy, we kind of talked through this. I'm okay if he shows up as a one-off, but he's going to end up being in the game environments most likely. Cooks already have the rule for that with Dak. Dortch and Wilson have the rule with Kyler. Yoshibas and Irwin. I really want to lower these guys and make them only a part of the Bengals stacks. I could lower these, force them to be in the Burrow doubles. The only problem with that is Gasecki's going to be in. I have a lot of Gasecki in this because I'm playing low tight end like I did last week. Cheap tight end like I did last week. Do I want these guys as one-offs? You know what? I don't want. I'm okay with Yoshivas as a one-off. Maybe I'm not okay with Irwin as a one-off. Maybe I put Irwin down to 4% and I tie him to Burrow. So that would force 4% of my Burrow lives would have Irwin and Chase. And then the others could be spread out between it's Chase and 6% of. I don't like that. I don't want Irwin as a one-off. I'm okay with Yoshibas as a one-off. Let me do this. So I'm going to put 4% here. I'm going to bump one of these other guys. I might bump DeMarcus. Because I did want to play more of him. And I'm going to tie him at the hip. Oh, and this is big. I'm actually going to bump Burrow up. I'm going to put separate. That way, 4% of my Irwin stacks, which is 1/3 of my Burrow stacks, or 4% of Irwin is going to be 1/3 of my Burrow stacks are going to have Irwin on it. I like that. And some might have Yoshivash, some will have Gasecki. Let me build the rule for this. Whew. You really want to think about this stuff. Irwin. All right, these guys tied at the hip. And now, because I made some player adjustments, I need to actually go change that in my player group, my player exposures. So I upped Burrow 2%. I bumped Irwin down 4%. So he's now down to between 3 and 5. So he's at 4%. So I'll put him between 3 and 5. And then I bumped DeMarcus Robinson. I did want him more. So this is good. I'm going to put it at 17 to 23. So I have him at 20%. This gives me a nice cushion. Just to confirm. Boop. Got it. I might want to play some Naylor. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll pivot something. I'll think about this. I might change some of my exposure so I get a Naylor or Mitchell. Like I wanted to play these guys. I just knew I didn't have the space to do it. Okay. Let's continue looking at any low played guys. Khalif Raymond joined at the hip with Goff. I have him at 6%. How much Goff exposure do I have? 12. That actually means half my rosters with Goff have Khalif Raymond. Ooh, do I really want that? I kind of do because he's the salary saver. And Detroit is hard to get to without a salary saver. It's going to be hard to play. You're going to have to play Jameson. Well, Jameson Williams is not too bad. What I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna lower this to 4. I'm going to up our good friend Tyler Johnson. I'll up Tyler Johnson for now. Again, I may suck these guys down and bring up Naylor or Mitchell. And if I find out more information about Jamison Williams, this guy could go up to 12, 16%. He might be in every Jared Goff stack if Jamison Williams is out or they are projecting him not to play much. I might end up doing that because he's the salary saver for Detroit. Let me go, but for now, I'm going to actually change this. So let me change. This is actually important. I'm glad we have to go through this, right? Do I really want 50% of my golf stacks to be with Khalif Raymond if Williams is playing? Oh, I actually had his exposure wrong. Ooh, glad I checked that. That would have been a problem. And he wouldn't have been on any lineups. That would have been really bad. We got to go check our work, which is what we're going to do here in a second. And Tyler Johnson. I have him now at 16%. Right? Tyler Johnson, 6%. Okay, cool. Click on the tight ends. Kelsey tied at the hip. We have that rule. Bowers is a one-off play intentionally. The other guys, I'm good with. Defense, don't worry about that. All right. We're in. Let's build lineups. I did this week 1, and I think I made one mistake that I had to fix. Let's see how well we did. I'm actually going to straight up build 150 because I am that confident in what we did. Ooh. It's really, as this is building, it's really important to understand. I know exactly, you can tell I'm walking through every one of my stacks, building the rules to match what I'm trying to do and making sure I have the exposures to make it work. You have to go through this. It takes a long, it feels like it's taking a long time. Like this took me 45 minutes. But for me to figure all that out, hand building 150 lineups, that would take 6 or 7 hours. Keeping track manually of who you've got, how much exposure, all that stuff. And even just building the 150 by hand. Like that is hard. Well, let's check our work. And the way we check our work is we look at our lineups. The first thing that we do is hit exposures. Who do I have? Where are the reds? And lo and behold, I got some reds. I wanted Cup at 70%. I got him at 58. No, not good. Kyron, same thing. I got him down. He's a little bit lower. I want him at 44. He's at 38. Am I okay with 58% Cup? I probably am going to be okay with this. Let's see what else we got here. I got Kyler low. That's actually interesting. The fact that I couldn't. The Optimizer does a really good job with quarterback stacks typically. If I have a low percentage of a quarterback, something might be wrong in my rules. I'm going to go check that. Actually, let's look at quarterbacks real quick. Stafford, good. It's just Kyler. Because the exposure should be right, who got bumped up? The Stafford on the high end, Burrow on high end, Mayfield on the high end, Mahomes on the high end. Goff on the lower end. Dak, Carr, a little bit lower. I feel like something's wrong with my Kyler rules. All right, let's go check it out. So first of all, let me make sure I have the exposures right. Michael Wilson, 4%. Greg Dortch, 4%. Marvin Harrison, 18%. Trey McBride, 12%. Okay, so that's right. Let's go look at my groups. Let's go confirm that we didn't screw up our groups. Kyler with 2. Kyler with 1 of these guys. This might be the problem right here. Is this bring back? These guys are already expensive, and now I'm forcing it expensive. The problem here is I could do 2 things here. I could make this 80%, so some Kylers don't have a Rams bring back. Or I could say 100%, but add the cheapies. The problem if I add the cheapies is it's probably going to put more of the cheapies in most of the Kyle lineups are going to have more of the cheapies if this is the problem. I'm going to gamble here and go Kyler 80% on these 2 guys. Maybe even 70%. And gamble that because I have so much exposure to the Rams cheapies anyways, that one of them will slip in. Again, if I do 100% but include the cheapies, it's not going to work. It'll have almost exclusively the cheapies, I'm guessing. Let me do that. Let me see if that fixes it. The rules are fine. It was just I think it's a salary problem. Okay. We'll rerun them here. Let me just look at our other exposures. Let's see what else is wrong here. Kyron's a little bit low. I think it's just because the reason why I think these are low is my total average salary was a little over 50,000. So concessions are gonna have to be made somewhere, and they typically get made. Well, Bink Machine typically makes them in the highest owned, highest exposed players. It typically does that. Everything else looks good here. Nice. Same thing with Cup. Tries to make the concessions in the highest owned players. I'm okay with this. I love Chase at 25. Like he's lower, but he's higher. I'm fine with like I'm good. Like I want more Cup, but I'm okay getting more Chase. I want it at 22. I get an extra 3%. All right. Tight end, good. Final draft flex. DST, good. One of the reasons why I'm so expensive. I don't I went over my salaries because I'm playing so many expensive Ds this week, which is a way I'm getting unique. But they made it. It made it work. This looks good. This looks real good. All right. I fixed the Kyler rule. It's the only rule that like really busted. I'm okay with a little bit less Kyron, a little bit less. I'm okay with that. Let's rerun. Let's see if I fixed my Kyler exposure because I do want to get the 10. I want to get the 10% Kyler if I can. That's the game that I really want to hit. I'm playing so much Rams. I want to play Kyler stacks. Oh, it's so important to do this and check your work. Now, once you get this working, you can build more unique rules. And I'm okay with that. Like, JM had some interesting rules. Like, I want to 25% of the time, I want two high price wide receivers. So maybe I'm betting big on Cup and Chase. And I want them in the lineup together. I want it to force Cup and Chase in a lineup together. And I want that 25% of the time. That's fine. I always build those rules after I get this. I call it the basics with my stacks and my defenses. Once I do all this, and I want to do some other fun stuff like that type of thing, force two low price running backs in a lineup, which we might be doing this week. Um, I'm okay with all those rules, but you got to make sure that oh man, I pressed build again on accident. I'll let it run 150 again. Sorry about that. You want to make sure that like your stacks are right. Because if they're wrong to begin with, you can't add more complex rules after that. You're going to screw things up. Like you've got to get the basics down on your stats. Because if they're not, you got to get that right first. And then if you do the other rules, you still have to go back and make sure that your stacks still look right. So I always start here, and I've learned to be actually pretty simple. I don't do much more after this from an optimizer standpoint because now you're forcing the optimizer to really bend in ways that it may not be able to and have to make concessions that you're not thinking about. All right, let's look at it. Let's see if I fixed Kyler. Well, I got him to 10. Got him to 10. Is my current still low? My cup's still low. Oh, this time Schoonmaker got lower. A lot of Kaseki. That's interesting. Kaseki, Parkinson, Moreau, McBride. I'm okay. Like if I had to submit this right now, I'd be fine. But anytime I have reds on this, and again, just so you can understand what I'm doing, I always put this as balanced. You could make this strict. I never do it. I want to be okay letting it be, letting you have the wiggle room that it's having. But if there's any red, typically that means I've done something that's too strict. Um, let's go look at some lineups. Let me start with the Kyler lineups. He's low. What happened? Do I have any colors? I do have a color without a bring. I'm looking at a game stack. Every color has two, so that means I have a double. Some Kylers don't have a bring back, and it's only like two of them. I like that. It gave me the flexibility that I was looking for. It's fine. Um, yeah, I don't know why I didn't do more there. Why I can't fit more in there. Well, I'm okay with 10% Kyler. I'm okay. I'll live with 10% Kyler. Let's look at some of my other rules to make sure they work. Like I'm looking at Brandon Cooks. I better see on my if Brandon Cooks is in the lineup, I better have all Dax. They are. That's a lot of Brandon Cooks. Is that how much? I think I have 6%. Do I have 6% Cooks? 6% Cooks. That would be 9 lineups. How many lineups do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 12. I should be able to like confirm this by looking at my exposures here. He should show, yeah, he's the highest, yeah, 8%. Wow. That's interesting. That means it was easier to get to DAX stacks, which I didn't expect. Because I thought that was DAC and CD were expensive, but it allowed me to get there very quick, much easier. Huh. I might lower it. I might lower Cooks. The problem is if I lower Cooks to like 4%, that doesn't necessarily, there's something else that's a little bit off here. Interesting. Let me look at my Kelsey line. I'm just looking at some of the rules. I'm just going to spot check some of my rules. Kelsey better be with Mahomes. He is. Let me look at my like Justin Watson lineups. There he is. 4 lineups. That's perfect. That's what I'm looking for. What about my Khalif Raymond lineups? All Jared Goff. Great. Who are my other rules I have? Like a Jameer Gibbs. Jameer Gibbs. Yeah, all with Baker. The way I wanted it. Exactly the way I wanted it. I'm gonna quickly look at my Derek Carr lineups, see how many ended up with CD, and a lot of them. Remember, it forced CD in, but not all the time. This looks good. Now I'm looking at a lineup like this: Carr, Olave, Foster, Moreau. So I'm betting on this, and then look who I get. Pacheco, Jefferson, Cup, because I'm playing these cheap. Like, man, that's good. I like that. I'm looking at these lineups. And I'm like, man, I get why I can't force the bring back, but look at this. Like, I get Olave, Shaheed. That's a nice stack, and there it is, the Kieran Williams in the cup play. Like, I love that, and I still get talent. I get Ayuk as a lever. Look at that leverage. Connor and Gesicki. It's beautiful. There's just so much. And this one, I get the C Lamb bring back, and I still get Cup because I played. Oh, look at this. Oh, okay, this is a problem. Look at this. And this is why you need to go through every one of your lineups. I never want. I'm okay with Kyron Williams and a Ram. Like I like the Kyron Williams Cup play, but I never want Cup and Robinson without Stafford. This is actually really big. I've got to fix this. Man, it's so good to look at. You got to look at your lineups and say, "Ooh, that's not right," because this is not right. I don't want that. How do I build this? I already have this one that says never more than one of these. The problem is like if I add Cup to this, I would never get doubles. I need to say unless they're paired with the quarterback. Big Machine doesn't allow this. Some optimizers that allow you that, Big Machine does not, which is fine. We can figure this out. Oh, let's see what I got here. Let's figure out how's the best way to do this. Cooper Cup. I think I'm gonna do it this way. What if I did it this? I'm thinking through. This is hard. It's hard to do this on the fly. Cooper Cup, Stafford. So if both of these guys are in, if both of these guys are in, this would force. This is basically forcing the double stack. Hmm. Cup, Stafford. If Cup and Stafford are both in, then I want, I could, add DeMarcus, right? If Cup and Stafford are both in, then force to mark, force one of these, that would work. But the problem is it doesn't account for the ones where he's not there. I gotta think about this. Man, it's hard doing this live. Cup. I have to have Cup and Stafford in there. The rule needs to say if Cup and not Stafford, then only one of these guys. That's what the rule needs to say, but I'm not sure how to do it. If Cup and not Stafford, then don't play any other pass catcher. Ooh. I don't know what to do here. Oh, I know what to do. I've got to do this for every single one of them, but I'm okay with this. Cup. If Cup and Demarcus Robinson then are in the lineup, you have to play Stafford. That's how we'll do it. Now, I have to do this for every combination. I've already done it for all the cheapies, so not a problem here. But I got to do it for all the other guys. Yep, that's what we're gonna do. You got to do it for every combination, which is a little bit annoying, but it's fine. We need to do it so we don't have bad lineups. Will be Parkinson. I have to do it this way. If Cup and Parkinson are in the lineup, then Stafford has to be in there. And then the last one. That is how we're going to do it. Oh, that was tough. We did it though. Tyler. Tyler Johnson. Let's see here. Cup, Tyler Johnson, Stafford 3-3. So now I've forced each of them in. I forced Cup to be. I'm okay with doubles, but they have to be. I'm okay with Cup and a pass catcher, but it's got to be with their quarterback. A simple rule. I wouldn't be like it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if I'll rebuild here. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if I had two pass catchers from the Rams without Stafford. Um, like I wouldn't like kill myself, but I've got so much Stafford to account for that I have to like it doesn't make sense to if I have so much Stafford in my 150. If I had no Stafford exposure, I'd probably be more okay with it. The fact that I have so much Stafford exposure, specifically to account for the fact that I might want to play both these guys together, and if I do, I should play the quarterback. I want to explicitly make sure that that doesn't happen. So let's build our lineups. Let's actually see. We need to make sure these are the tricky rules. We need to make sure that I don't have Cup and a pass catcher with um, any of the without Stafford. And by the way, look, I got my Kyler under in. He's a little under 12, but he's much better. Sometimes just a rerun works. You can do multiple runs and see what happens. Look, I even got my Kyron just a little bit lower. Like it's working out. It's a little bit better. We'll try to fix this. Cup is still at 58, which is fine. From a tight end standpoint, good. I always look at this before I go check any of my rules. These look pretty good. Let me go look at my Cooper Cup now. Cooper Cup. And now we have to go look. I'm going to look at each one of these. Will be. And I better see Stafford on every single one of these. And I do. And then I'm going to look at DeMarcus. Oh, again, these are all my lineups with Cup and DeMarcus Robinson. Great. They're all with Stafford. And with Tyler Johnson. If I could spell his name. Yes, we're in business. And just for funsies, let's go look and see what the Cup and Kieran Williams lineups look like. And look at that. Oh, it's so beautiful. Look at that. I have so many lineups with Cup and Kyron without the pass catcher. And notice none of these have Kyler, which is might be part of the reason why Kyler's exposure was depressed a little bit, suppressed a little bit, not depressed. I'm okay with that. I don't want to play Kyler with both these guys. I'm okay with that. The rules get real tricky there. I actually really like this. That's I checked some of my other rules. This is a good stopping point. I feel like I've got there. There was a few adjustments I had to make, but man, it's really important to understand and really check your rosters and be like, that didn't make sense. And think about the simplest way you can build rules to account for those without overcomplicating things. Again, as you build more rules, the optimizer has to figure out how to fit that fits in with all your other rules. And so I may build some other funny stuff. Like I was thinking 20% of my cup roster is forced chase in there or something like that. I have a feeling that the way I built my rules and my exposures, it's going to just kind of happen naturally, those things. But I may force some of that stuff in. But I think my rules are pretty good now. That was how I did it. It was a very long video, intentionally a long video, because you need to understand the type of meticulousness that I use to make an optimizer do 150 lineups the way I would have done it if I hand built it manually. And really intricate process. But if you just start with your quarterbacks and build your rules from the quarterbacks and then think through things and then check your work, you're going to be in good shape. And so, hope you enjoyed this video. Again, a long video, but one that I think you'll be able to go back to and see how I'm building lineups. Hopefully, if you're having trouble, you can actually see this for yourself and think through these things also. So, thank you very much. And I will see you sometime soon. Potentially, I'll build another video about some other mistakes. But this one was very, very important, I think. Thanks.